Well, hello there, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Cloud-Based Mayhem. Summer has fully arrived. Some big flights going down over in Europe and here in the States, and I'm sure other parts of the world. Haven't been in the game too much with this house build going on, but getting excited to go to Chelan in a few days for U.S. Nationals, and that's about the only housekeeping I've got this week before we get into the show or some event stuff. The X-Beer is coming up. Always exciting. And then the Dolomite and a bunch of others over in the Alps. So have to keep our eyes on that. The X Lakes Challenge up in Scotland is taking place. I think it's Scotland. Yeah, X Lakes is in Scotland. Jockey's neck of the woods. That's taking place this weekend. So some exciting things going down. Super excited to watch the X-Beer this year. See what happens there. Some big names in that one. And the X Red Rocks is now totally overbooked. That's been pretty exciting to get all that put together. So that's scheduled for the end of September. We've got Aaron Durigati and Paul Guschelbauer and Tom de Dorlado, Tanguy Renaud Good, and Patrick Von Cannell, a bunch of legends from the X Alps and other places coming. So that should be a lot of fun to have all that talent on the side of the pond showing us how it's done. And the Red Rocks Wide Open is the another U.S. Nationals event and pre-PWC, which Logan and I are running, and that is filled up real quick right from the beginning. Still got a few spots we're keeping open for foreign pilots, so keep an eye on that one as well. That's September 10th to the 17th. It should be a lot of fun to go racing in such spectacular country. So fun things happening in the future. Hope you're getting some. This talk I did quite a few months back, still digging through some of the episodes I recorded this winter as I was getting ready for this house build, and I wouldn't be able to record nearly as much, which has been true, but is with Leandro Estevam Montoya. I hope I'm saying his name correctly, but Leandro and I had a great talk about bivy flying down in Brazil. That's not something, we hear about the records all the time and all the great comp flying they've got in Brazil. Brazil's obviously got tons of great flying and lots of amazing pilots, but I hadn't heard too much about bivy, so Leandro reached out to me and shared with me his website, which is in Portuguese, which I don't speak, so I couldn't find too much there that I could understand, but it was clear that there's a whole group of folks down there getting after it with bivy. So we had a really cool chat about just bivy flying in Brazil, the possibilities, what's been tackled, what's left down there, which is tons, and just shared a lot. He shared a lot of information about how they do it, gear, and how it goes down in Brazil. And he's got a really cool website, highcanfly.com.br, with tons of information. And that's what they're all about, is just sharing it all, trying to get more people to come down to Brazil and have cool adventures. So that's what this talk's all about, having adventures. Hope you enjoy, and hope you're having a great summer. Cheers. Leandro, it's good to see your smiling face. I'm excited to have this talk with you because we don't do enough talks with Brazilians. So thanks for reaching out, and thanks for telling me about all the hike and fly and bivy stuff you're doing down there. Everybody hears Brazil, if they haven't been there, and knows about the Sertão and all the records that have happened there over the decades, but we don't know too much about hike and fly. So I'm excited to have this chat with you.
Amazing to be part of your show. We follow you in networks and also the show. We heard the show from Samuca and Saladini and other Brazilian pilots. We are excited to see as well the participation on X Alps. So it's a pleasure to be here and share a little bit about the hike and fly in Brazil.
Yeah. So tell me, where are you and where is the hike and fly going down? Brazil is, like the U.S., a huge country. I know you've got tons of fantastic flying sites. The World Cup's going to be happening in Baixo here in a few days, and a place that looks just amazing. But I've only flown the Sertão. So where are you and orient people to the type of flying that happens where you are?
Today I'm based in Atibaia. It's a city near São Paulo, around 1 hour from São Paulo. São Paulo, it's a big center in Brazil. It's not Buenos Aires, it's São Paulo.
Yes.
But the point is, here in Atibaia, we build, not only me, I'm trying to be here as someone talking by a team. We have a team doing this kind of hiking fly in Brazil. It's not only about me, for sure. And Atibaia has a small pole or a small place where there is a school, a paragliding school that became specialized on hike and fly. Huh. So the professor, he's also training the students, the new learning paragliding guys, to buy hike and fly stuff. We have a nice place here to hike a mountain, about 1 hour hiking, to have a really nice takeoff, a good local flight zone. And so it's nice. So Atibaia is one of the important places for hiking fly in Brazil. But for sure, it's not the beautiest one. It's not the most beautiful one. We can do hiking fly near São Paulo, in Espírito Santo, in Baixo Guandu. We just have been there. We just was there a few weeks ago. Amazing place to do hike and fly and bivouac trips. The point we are trying to show is the scenario of hike and fly began in Brazil around 2014, 2012. Some guys was doing that in 2008. But in the country, the paragliding sport developed together with the hang gliding. So everyone was flying from conventional takeoffs, those ones when we reached by the car. So we had a lot of mountains, really nice place, around 2,400 meters. We don't have really high mountains, but amazing place from our country without being explored by paragliding. In this new generation, around 2008, 2012, 2013, began to explore those mountains, and I was part of this team, let's say, or this group of pilots doing that. It was really a pleasure. So Atibaia is one place, but you can do it in Baixo Guandu, also Governador Valadares, and Serra da Mantiqueira. It's another spot between São Paulo, Rio de Janeiro, Minas. We can go through this place, and I could give more details.
So is it, when you mention those places, those are pretty well-known flying sites. Is that because I haven't been to any of these places. I've only been to the Sertão, where it's really, really dry. Are these places that are pretty jungly? Are they, or can you hike up and, pretty much at the tops of every mountain has a possible launch, or is it really treed and you would have to do some work to create a launch there?
Man, you just touched the exactly point. Most of the hiking fly places, our challenge is to find a takeoff place.
Okay.
And when we are trying to do BIV adventures, we have to be really aware about each place we could take off, because you have to connect those ones. It's not easy we cannot just hiking up, because there are a lot of trees, and we will never find a place to take off. But those places I mentioned, let's say we have really well-known places for flying Brazil as Baixo Guandu, Governador Valadares, etc. In these places, we have a trail, not the conventional road car, but we have a trail where we can hike up and start the adventure, or start the hike and fly in a traditional takeoff.
Okay.
But beyond those, you can find really nice places beyond Baixo Guandu, in the same hill, in the same mountain, let's say. You have another spots to take off and connect for a BV trip. We just need to be aware that it will be, let's say, high grass. Sometimes the grass is really high, and sometimes you have really whole rocks. And those are dangerous for the lines.
Oh.
But it's possible to find those places and connect this place to an adventure. I'm beginning to talk about those very known place, because everyone knows about that. But there are another mountains amazing to explore.
Do you know what the longest kind of bivy in terms of distance and days has been?
Yes, it was just done by a colleague, a really amazing pilot. He's piloting an Omega X Alps. His name is Lucas, and he flew from the top of Espírito Santo until the bottom. He flew for his adventure took 16 days doing the adventure. He had 2 pilots supporting him on the beginning, so they began in 3. But 2 of them had no this challenge. They was there just for fun, and Lucas was really for the challenge, and he had the support from his wife. And the distance was he got really bad conditions, so he had to walk around 430 kilometers, and he flew around 250. So the total
was that's a lot of walking.
Yes, man, it was a lot of walking.
Jeez.
But this guy, he flew a lot. He's a really amazing pilot, one of the best hiking flying guys here in Brazil for sure. More flying than hiking because we have a stronger guys for hiking. But he got his bad luck in the weather.
So could, if you had better weather, could you reverse those numbers? Could you fly, 500K and walk 100K or something?
Yes, for sure. Okay. Because he already did more than 150K kilometers in the region flying. That's a good marks for a region, for a Espírito Santo region. And it could reverse the numbers. The good news regarding flying in Espírito Santo for hiking, fly, or bivouac adventures are you can connect the takeoffs. That's I think that's simple for someone coming from Europe because you don't have to mind that too much. Of course, you have to have in mind in adventure where you're going to take off, but you can try to take off from anywhere, almost anywhere. But in Espírito Santo and here in Brazil, you have to have those spots in mind. So if your next takeoff could be around 50 kilometers from you, so you have to do at least a good flight. 40 kilometers is a good flight for us. And hiking 10 kilometers to reach the next point.
Okay.
If you fly just 10, you have to walk 40. There's no, or you have to go back and start again the next day in the same place you began the day earlier.
Forgive my geographical ignorance here, but Espírito Santo is one of the states of Brazil?
Yes, it's one of the states already in the southeast, just below the Bahia. And in Espírito Santo, you have Baixo Guandu.
Okay.
And near it, you have Governador, more or less in the same latitude, So it's...
Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. And so when he did that whole trip, 14 days, did he have a lot of land or ground support, or was he trying to be pretty self-sufficient? Or let me ask that a different way. Are there lots of little towns and villages where you can get plenty of food and water, and so you don't have to carry that much, or are you really quite remote and you have to be pretty self-sufficient?
No, in this adventure, Lucas had support from his wife, Michele. He's also a pilot, and they passed through a lot of small villages, and they didn't propose to be full bivouac trip, so they spent some nights in the hole.
Okay.
That was their challenge. The challenge was to cross all the distance just flying and hiking, but they could stay in the small cities, etc. So that's what their specific challenge. But we had other adventures here in Brazil. For example, we have a big trail around 600 kilometers, and we made part of it around 400 kilometers just walking and bivouacking. It's called Transmantiqueira. It's near big mountains in Brazil, in between Minas, São Paulo, and Espírito Santo. Those mountains have around 2,400, 2,700 high. And same adventure. You can connect the peaks, taking off, and you will be able to find small cities. But you have to have food for at least 2 days, because you can land in a really jungle zone, in a really wild zone, and it's important to have something to eat for sure.
For the listeners who are hearing you and getting excited about coming to Brazil but that haven't flown there, what are the main differences, or what would you need to be aware of between doing a bivvy trip, say, if you've done one in the Alps, where logistics are really easy, and there's you can hike or not hike because there's lifts and cable cars and to every launch. There's good access to weather and cell. What's different about Brazil in terms of how you would prepare? In other words, could I just come to
Mhm.
Sao Paulo and meet you and have my kind of typical bivy kit and figure it out? Or is it really require quite a bit more planning?
No, it's a really, really fair and good question. I answered the same for some friends who had more experience flying in Alps than me. I have just a few small experience flying over there. What I can say and what I read in your books and the books about that, but so the main difference is on hiking. It's here you regarding your kit, you can have same kit. Okay, you can have a small tent. Probably we will find some rain, so it's important to be prepared for some rain. But we don't need to have so warming clothes. So it's warm here. Even flying, you will reach 3,000 meters from level sea, so it's not so cold as it is in Europe. So we can hike with lightness, light, heavy. But you have to pay attention in other stuff. The hiking here probably to be more or less wet. It's humid, but you will see you hiking in the jungle. Probably in the most of the place you have a jungle. You see butterflies, tucanos, a lot of birds. It's a lot of more life than hiking in the Alps. That I can say for sure. And some snakes. It's important to be aware about the snakes and try to pay attention about that. And so regarding the hiking, it will be really fun to hiking here. Amazing places to see, but a lot of nature, sometimes some animals. On the from the takeoff side, our takeoffs are more abrasive. The rock is abrasive. It's very important to take care of all the lines.
Yeah.
Sharp, yes, thank you. Sometimes the grass is high, and everything is a little bit wild. It's important to be aware, to be tough. For you to be easy, right?
Like a warm Alaska.
Really, for you, I have impression you don't need to change anything, but just to give an overview to the pilots and the pilots colleagues. And regarding flying, our conditions are most of the time are not so strong because we are below that part from in northeast Brazil, when the guys beat their records. The condition is really strong and the wind is strongest ever.
Sure.
In our region, the wind is not so strong and the condition is more moderate. And when the guys flying here from Alps, sometimes they get worried about the wind they feel on the takeoff, because it's different from Alps. But you don't need to care too much about that because we don't have valley winds. So most of the times the wind is stronger on the takeoff than in the landing zone.
Oh, okay.
So that wind is good to take off easily, to take care about the lines, do a really nice takeoff. It's good to have that wind. So it's good to have that in mind. But from the general point of view, a guy coming from Europe to do a bivouac flight, you don't need so many clothes. You find a lot of water. Most of the mountains will have a water because the jungle around it, and it will be warmer. Also, the people living when you landed, you will still a picturesque. You still a different kind of. So they will come to you. They will compliment you. They say, "Oh, are you coming from where? What is this? How it works?" Etc. Warm people. If you land, Beatriz Pourreau is the name of my colleague. He's living in Switzerland, and she comes to have a bivouac trip with us, a real friend. And she landed in a barbecue place. So she ate a lot. She drank beer a lot. The guys just embraced her. Come on, where are you from? Come on.
The people are so nice in Brazil.
Yeah. That you notice for sure the difference. That's the main difference you find here. And yes, probably you eat for free if you land we had guys landing in the mariage places and these mariage parties, and they participate in the party. This kind of, you still picturesque, a different kind of person. It's not so common to see paraglider landing in these different places here. We don't have so many pilots.
Tell me about, my first couple trips to Brazil were sailing oriented. I sailed up the coast and past Recife and up to the Caribbean. I did a solo trip there a bunch of years ago, and this was before I started flying. This was
amazing.
It was a long time ago though, but it was. I started it. I started near Santos or in Santos, so near Sao Paulo.
Yep.
And then at least in the ports along the coast, security was a pretty big issue then. It was, a lot of it didn't feel very safe. And you hear that a lot from some of the Brazilian pilots when I'm traveling in other places. They always talk about that certain areas are not very safe, but I've never experienced, in the Sertão, you didn't have to worry about that. It didn't felt like to me at all. My experiences were just like what you're describing, just incredibly friendly people in these little villages. And, but that Sertão isn't really near any big population centers. But tell me about the security of going through these areas. Is that a big deal? Do you have to worry about it? Or do you just have to kind of be smart?
It's a really, really fair question. And yes, the security is a problem in our country, most related with the big cities. But of course, since we have really poor people, we have a income distribution, one of the worst in the world. So you have people trying to do your way to find your own stuff. I'm not justifying, just telling that it's an unsafe country regarding security. Yes, in these small villages, it's important to pay attention, but most of the we don't have we don't have that kind of common guys being stolen or being under danger in these small villages. We have to pay a lot of attention when we are still in the airport or leaving the big cities to go to this small place. Of course, but I have to agree that we pay a lot of more attention to that than someone living or doing bivouac trips in Europe. And if I was doing it with a girl, I should be double attention because it's different kind of danger. And if I was a girl doing that alone, I probably am going to try to have someone with me, from a male guy. If you are a big guy as you, etc., it's easier to manage this kind of risk. But we don't have mention of people being stolen in this kind of adventure. Most of the time, you get really don't. But it's important to be aware in the big cities.
Tell me about the season. When would be the best time to come? Because I know there's good flying in Brazil year round, but what's the best time to come?
Yep.
And actually, what area would you focus on? So for me, if I was just going to get on a plane and come down there and do some bivvy, what would be the area of the country that you would focus, that you would point me to, and what time of year?
An amazing question. I would like to say Serra da Mantiqueira. That's the hill, a lot of mountains near São Paulo, Rio, and Minas Gerais, because it's my preferred place. But it's not the best place to do BV trips. It's one-off, but it's really challenging, a lot of rent, even entirely year. So, and hard to take off, hard to connect the takeoffs. The best place for BV trips today, maybe we can discover other places in the following years, but still Espírito Santo. And you can do it regarding the time zone. The best time is between April and June. Let's say in June it's it's winter, so the conditions will be really soft. So it will be hard to do long flights. And if you came in January or December, February, the conditions are really hot, but you have a lot of rain at the afternoons. The clouds will be
every day.
Yeah, and the development is really quicker here than in Europe. The clouds they really develop really fast. Sometimes you can get some traps. So between April, maybe March, if you, for experienced guys, March and before May could be March, and June could be the best option. Also in October, November, it's good as well, because we are after the winter, we are coming back to the summer, so it could be nice as well.
There's so many, paragliding is really big in Brazil, and there's so many really good pilots. What do you chalk that up to? Is that the community pushing everyone, or is it just because there's such a great vibe in Brazil with flying, or is it the place and the conditions? Is it? I always think of the UK. They won the Worlds this year. They don't have great flying in the UK. It's pretty challenging. There's a lot of rain, but they get really good because they can fly in those conditions that are pretty average or below average even. They get really good at flying in really light conditions when there's just tiny bits of lift, and they create, historically they have created very well-rounded pilots, and that's something I see in Brazil, that there's just
I think.
What do you chalk that up to?
Yeah, but it's hard to answer that. And I came to paraglide in 2014, so I'm still learning how it is, this stuff. But what we can see is, in the cross country pilots, they are really competitive pilots. And in Brazil, there is some kind of feeling. That's my opinion, right? I'm not an expert, but I could say, give some examples. But we, as Brazilian, we are really competitive, and we want to be the best in that stuff. Not the best in the entire world, that's impossible. The best in your group. Let's say about wine. If you are a someone who drink wine, in Brazil, the most sold wine, more than 60-70%, is the strongest one. So no one spend time with the other kind or other nuance of the friend. No, it's the strongest one. So if you are going to fly paragliding, probably they will try to evaluate regarding the classes in the paragliding. They will jump from one to another as soon as possible, and they try to reach the distance. So if the game is the cross country and distance, you try to do the best, the distance, the longest flight ever. Every day, and you go to the places where you will be able to do that, and etc. And I had to make my flight in Quixadá because it's the most famous place to do distance and this kind of. And so that's part of our culture, to do the best, to push the best, to try. It's more relatively competitive. Of course, not everyone is like that. I'm just doing some stereotypes, archetypes. But here in our community of our hike and fly, we try to avoid that kind of competition. We try to still enjoy the just hike and do a flush fly to the ground.
Slider.
Yeah. And that's so we try to keep the flying pleasure as the most important thing. And I think we can reach that in some level. For example, most of the team doing hiking flying in Brazil, they still fly in the big hot winds. Most of them don't move ahead because we get afraid about some hard takeoffs or hard landing place. So we try to keep it more or less safe. And we can do good flight, 50 kilometers, 60 kilometers. We around see it as a really amazing, good flight. Maybe we can change that mindset in the near future, but we try to do this balance between risk and performance. But I think Brazil produce good pilots because that competitivity in the pilots, each small group has his own competitive, and these guys try to do their best. We really enjoy to do the best. It's some kind I can see over here. I said about wine, but that could apply in a lot of other stuff.
It's just the culture.
Yes,
I didn't really know that about Brazilians. I guess it makes sense.
It's not fair to say that as a generic stuff, but we can see that in the guys, because everyone piloting a paraglider, it's already someone with not
pretty weird.
Yeah, pretty weird.
Yeah, we're all odd ducks. Yeah, for sure. The how many? Just out of curiosity, do you know how many pilots there are in Brazil? And I know that, how do you define a pilot? Is that one flight a year? But do you know how many registered your organization what's that?
We have an country organization, a federal organization. It's an association from the pilots. It's called CBVL. I don't know how many of them are active. I can say from our local club. We have a local club here in Atibaia. We have around 300 pilots playing and flying in here near Atibaia. But we are really near São Paulo. We are the most near place to fly in São Paulo, so we have a big number of guys because But in Brazil, it's hard to say, Gavin. I should avoid to give you that number because probably it would be a wrong one. But I can say we are not a real big market for paraglider in the world. That I can say for sure. And a good thing is that we have South paragliders here. The company selling paraglider, they are producing the South Brazil, and that stimulates a lot the sport in Brazil. Probably if we didn't have the South paraglider, it should be even less pilots, number of the pilots. But it's hard to estimate. Maybe 5,000 pilots, maybe 10,000. I cannot say honestly. Sorry.
Yeah, it sounds probably pretty similar to the States. And we do you feel like it's growing? Do you feel like paragliding is becoming more popular? And the numbers increasing, or does it stay? Because here in the States, it doesn't. It stays kind of the same. There's lots of people learning, but then lots of people quitting.
Yeah.
So the overall number stays pretty same year after year.
What I can say is the hiking and fly is taking a lot of attention, because when we are in flying takeoffs, etc., a lot of people pay a lot of pilots. They really enjoy to see the small pack paraglider, the light paraglider. So they really we still have those guys flying with really heavy equipment. A lot of us are flying with those. So the hike and fly, it's growing between the pilots, and also we are taking attention from climbers and people doing hiking and trekkers. They're moving to paragliding because today it's easy to fly a paraglider. Let's say if you're not going to do a traverse, etc., it's not so complicated. The equipment is already more secure than 20 years ago. That's what I mean. It's more easy to join the sport today than 20 years ago. It was a lot more dangerous from our point of view. But the sport itself, it's hard to say if the number is increasing. We don't have really trustable statistics in Brazil. Even the association, some guys doesn't like the association that much. Other ones, they love the association. And the number, if you are associated, then you will be there, but you can be a not active pilot anymore.
Leandro, tell me about, with hike and fly. When I first got into bivy, this was a long time ago, we used to talk about that it was, in a place like the Alps, you don't have to make it hard. In other words, you can land in the valley. You don't have to top land. You don't have to do a lot of the things that are sometimes required in what I would call more of a kind of sexy bivy, where you're never, you only have the initial hike to the top and then you stay high, and you pick a time in the day before it's really died off, and you can, stick it in some tiny little place and camp there and basically stay high for the duration of the trip. But that requires quite a bit more skill, because top landings, of course, more risky and harder to do. When you said there's a school there near where you are, and there's a kind of a big push, or it's pretty welcoming to get into bivy. What are you guys telling the newer people? How should people start flying bivy?
We today, for the students, the hike and fly or bivouac trips, they are more for 3 days only, most of the time 3 days only, and most of them hiking up at the afternoon or at the morning. They spend the day on the mountain, let's say, and they pass the night. No, sorry, let's say the classical one. They hiking up at the afternoon, so they spend the night on the mountain. In the takeoff, they be there. After they took off at the morning, most of them around 10 a.m., 9 a.m., before the strong conditions, so they can land in the valley, not an European valley, we call it valley, but it's more flat land, and landed over there. They pack everything, and they go to the next mountain. They eat something. Sometimes they eat on the city, sometimes they eat what they have, and we go to the next mountain. That's the classical bivy trip for the students. So they don't try to do landing and the takeoff, top landing. They don't do top landing, and if the conditions are strong, they don't go. Sometimes they don't go, but most of them are really good pilots. But they are starting on the BV, so they can manage that. When we are doing the or let's say hardcore, or when we are trying to explore new place, so it's a few pilots, 3, sometimes 4, and then that conditions we set a line of possible takeoffs for the next day. Sometimes they are good, sometimes they're not that good, and we try to do top landing. We really try. Sometimes we can do it, sometimes we don't, and most of the time you have to hike the next day because to do a top landing in these kind of mountains, you have to have a high base. We don't have mid zone top landing.
Okay.
Or you land in the top, or you land in the valley.
Okay.
And sometimes, so you have to have a high base. You have to climb a lot. You have to manage to do. We did it really amazing top landings already, and we already flushed. You just fall down amazingly miserably sometimes, and have to hike. Most of the time, you have to hike again in the next day.
Okay.
That's the common stuff. And we try to do part of the hiking at the beginning of the night. So we camp in, let's say 1/3 of the way we already did yesterday night. So we can be already far away from the small village. So we know smaller risk. We don't need to be, we avoid to be in the train stations or in the city itself. Most of the time, we try to find another place, a grass place. We land, we camp there, and we finish the hike the next day.
Are you typically going south to north? That's just what I have in my mind because you're down in Sao Paulo. But or is it north to south, east to west? What's the kind of typical line? Or are you mostly trying to do out and backs? Would you start near where you are and go north a couple days and then back south? Or what's kind of the predominant wind?
Nice. We have a predominant wind northeast wind here in Brazil.
Okay.
And most of these mountains, even in Espírito Santo and Rio de Janeiro, and also between Rio de Janeiro and São Paulo, you can fly with northeast wind.
Okay.
And we already tried to do heading wind from the southwest to northeast, and sometimes from northeast to the. But a good line here could be, we began in the mountains. In these mountains and around, you have, let's say, it's sea level. You have a uphill until a plateau, and after that, another uphill to these mountains we are talking about, Serra da Mantiqueira, for example. And we try to begin in the middle of the mountains and reach the ocean. So we are flying to east. Not sure if but we are flying to east. And so we begin in the high, and we can try different peaks. After that, we jump from the high place to a smaller one. We fly in this zone, and after that, we can fly to the beach. It's not easy, but it's amazing. It's not easy because the trees, because we just have a few taking off zones. But one of our most amazing hiking flying peaks was in this way. So me and my friend, we did 150 kilometers flying, and we walk around less than 10 kilometers because we were able to do a top landing. But 2 guys from the group, they did in 2 days. So they flew around 60 in the first day, and in the second day, almost 90, and they could reach the ocean.
That'd be special.
Have some fish. That's always special. And most of the time when you reach the ocean, you have that low clouds, because the ocean is 800 meters below than the let's say the terrain when we began. So we have the clouds are below you. So you reach sometimes 700 meters above those clouds, and you have to go down. You have that flow. It's really, really amazing. I can share some images with you. It's amazing. And for experienced pilots, it's not that hard. It's hard to us because we are mid experienced, but it should be amazing. But that kind of venture, many guys in Brazil don't do this. Many pilots don't try this. That's why it's important to have a website showing the route, showing the easiest route, how we can begin. It's good.
So your website has all this kind of information, so listeners could get on there and kind of do some study beforehand before coming.
Yes, but it's always the new stuff is always a little bit outdated because I'm not able to update it as we are doing. But yes, there is a lot of information over there, the routes to hike up, etc. But we still need a lot of help on this. We have just a few tracks over there. A lot of more work should be done to fulfill that. It's more like a collaboration from other pilots. We have pilots in South doing hiking, flying, this kind of adventure in South, West, etc. And some of them are sending the tracks to the website, and we try to keep that. But someday we expect to have a lot more tracks or routes over there, easy to guys to follow. And we still need to put it in English as well. That's our fault.
What apps are you using for mapping and topography and roads and that kind of thing? And then briefly lay out your kind of typical instrument package? Are you just flying with a phone and a Fly Sky High? And an app like Fly Sky High, and then a small Vario. Is that kind of it?
We try to keep each one has their own variometer. Some of them have maps, others no, others don't have maps. But what we do is we use a lot of Google Earth. Yeah. Even it's easy to use. Google Maps as well. We have been using Fat Maps. Yeah. It's one good to find trails. Yes, and some guys have specific apps in the mobile phone for flying. I don't use those. I use just the variometer because I already know more or less the mountains and the lines. I have that in mind. But for someone coming new, they could take advantage of those you said, or Google Earth. It works good as well here in Brazil because you can download the offline maps.
Is the cell coverage pretty good? Are you guys able to create a Telegram group or something to stay in touch with one another, or are you mostly relying on InReach?
We are relying on regarding the one pilot to speaking with her. We have WhatsApp groups.
Okay.
Well, we contact more in WhatsApp groups, but the guys are really collaborative and that way, and everyone loves to share their routes, etc. We don't compete to do the best one. Instead, most of the time when someone starts some kind of adventure, the others provide a lot of support, providing info, giving tips regarding. We didn't spoke about that, but regarding the landing zones. We don't have those kind of cables coming down from the mountain to the valley. Those ones who took the Bleak and other guys in the XW, really risk ones. We don't have this kind of, but we have small cables in the landing zones near the routes and the streets. So we have to pay a lot of attention to those 10 meters small cable. We already have some accidents on that.
Sure.
In the valleys, So they share this kind of information. Pay attention on this, or you can land over there, or better than there is a trail that you can use to hike up again to that mountain. If you land in the north face, sometimes because we are not so structured regarding where are the trails. It's important to, if you're coming, it's good to have contact with someone. We will be happy to support, to help, to give a lot of info. But between the guys here, it's a collaborative. The guys are really nice.
I don't know if you're familiar with this, but there was, and I wish it has a cool name. I forget the name of this, but for years, and I don't know if they're still doing it, but for years there was a hang gliding. They would, cross big chunks of Brazil with hang gliders, and so it was kind of a bivvy, but with hang gliders. So obviously they weren't carrying their stuff up to launch. It was, supported by trucks or cars, but they would cover a lot of ground. It went on for a long time. Are they still doing that?
Yeah, there are some initiatives like that. We have a big event in Northeast. I don't remember exactly the name right now, unfortunately, but it was something like crossing the Sertão, or crossing the wild zones. And there were guys with hang glider, paragliding, also some guys with paramotor, a paraglider with motor, and they were covering a huge distance doing an event with cars supporting them. It was really amazing. and with a lot of sponsorship and brands involved with that. I will remember the name until the end.
But that's up in the Northeast. That's kind of up in the Sertão. Okay. So totally different thing.
And really different. In our zone, we don't have this kind of. Most of the adventures are being done by paragliding because the mountains are hard to reach. Most of these mountains are hard to reach with a car. They don't have trails over there. You need. They don't have a road over there. You have to do it with a paraglider. No way to do it hang glider.
Okay. What do you think the most aggressive objective could be? Where could you start and where could you end potentially? Is there a string of mountains? I should have looked closer at the maps before we got on the phone here, but is there a string, like a chain of mountains, the Alaska range or the Rockies, or that you could start at one tip and get to the other tip, 1,000 kilometers away or something?
Yes, one of those challenges is still open because it was done partially only by a colleague called Fabio Ferreira. He did part of this, but we just the Brazilian trails community, they just started one of the biggest trails in Brazil. It's called Transmantiqueira. So you will begin here near São Paulo, 200 kilometers from São Paulo. The trail has 900 kilometers, the total trail. You need to pass through the biggest peaks, some of the biggest peaks in Brazil, because you have Pedra da Mina, 2,700 meters, and it's in the middle of this trail. And we have several possible takeoff points in this trail, and it will finish beyond Rio de Janeiro, above it, and you will pass through one of the biggest or most important mountains in Brazil. Because we have from 10 peaks, the 10 highest peaks in Brazil, 9 of them are in this hill.
In that chain?
In that chain. And you can try to connect it. No one did it fully yet, but it is still a challenge. Fabio did more than half. He did more than, I don't remember exactly, almost 500 kilometers, but he could not complete the entire zone because the conditions changed, so we had rain, so it was hard. And that's one of the big challenge. But to have other ones in the Espírito Santo, as Lucas did, etc. That's always nice.
Is that not been done because it's just really hard, to get the right conditions to pull it off? There's just too much jungle, or is it just because not enough people have tried?
Both of them. It's not easy, even for a really high experience pilot. It could be challenging because the taking off are just a few, and you have to connect them. But in the conditions, you have to be here ready for the conditions. You can have a full week of good weather. It doesn't happen every month. You have to be here and try and have some luck to accomplish. I think both of them. But the view is amazing, and adventure it's worth for sure. We will be trying that for our entire lives if necessary to accomplish. But some reinforcement will be welcome. Gavin.
Yeah. No, it's just I'm so glad you reached out because it just hasn't been something at all on my radar. Obviously I've known that the flying in Brazil is incredible since I got into this sport because there's, like I said, there's so many great Brazilian pilots and you hear about it all the time, and it's very reliable to have comps there, and then of course the famousness of the Sertão, but I hadn't thought about bivy that much there, and I don't know why. I applaud you and your group and all your colleagues you're chasing it and making it happen. And thanks for sharing your story with us. I really appreciate it, and I hope next time I come down there, I'm coming down with my bivy kit.
No, please, you will be welcome, and it will be good to have an opinion from the guys from outside. Most of the time we are doing just with Brazilians. We had now the visit from Beatriz. She's from Switzerland, as I said. but it's not. We had Andy over here, but he didn't come join us in this kind of adventure. But it would be good to have opinion from guys from outside to improve our own levels, to learn a lot with you guys, experienced guys. And we, of course, will be able to share something that we know from here, the region, etc., what we already did.
Leandro, we've talked quite a bit about bivy, but you sent me an email about some kind of the highest peak in Brazil. Tell me about that.
Oh, it was really an amazing adventure, because the highest peak in Brazil is in the middle of jungle, the Amazon jungle, really north of Brazil, almost 2,000 kilometers from Manaus, that is the biggest center in the north of the country. And the adventure over there is the peak has almost 3,000 meters. And to reach there, you have to pass to Yanomami, the indigenous Yanomami guys. So they are the guides for this trail. You cannot reach that place alone, or you can be killed by them because they control the zone, but they are really friendly if you come with them. Of course, they are developing it's important to say that they are developing an ecotourism program. So in the following years, anyone will be able to reach this peak, because they will have a company leading guys over there. But to reach this peak, you have to go one day flying, one day with a car, another day in the ship, a small ship, those fishing ships, really small, and 4 days walking in the jungle.
Whoa.
So it's a lot of adventure, a lot of effort to reach there. You have, and these guys, the Yanomami, they were rich in 60s. So they are already more or less Occidental Persian, but they are still speaking in their idiom. They don't speak even Portuguese very well. So you still have an indigenous experience. They cook for you. They are looking for animals in the jungle to hunt them. It's interesting to see. And you move from the jungle to a plateau at 2,000 meters. So you change a lot of regarding the climate. You pass from a really humid jungle to a place more dry and colder. And after that, you do a final step climbing to the peak around 2,993. And no one flew from paraglider from there until 2019. Sorry for my English. And I had the opportunity to take off from there in January 2019, do a fly over the jungle, because you have to fly to east. So you just take off around 3,000 meters, let's say, difference from takeoff from the jungle.
Oh, nice.
So it's
10,000 foot glide.
Oh, man, but you don't go to the jungle because there is no place to land in the jungle.
Sure.
So you have to contour the mountain and land behind it in the plateau, because you have a plateau behind the mountain. So it was really amazing, because you look to all sides and you see just jungles and jungles, and you feel really the exposure. You are exposed, right? You cannot do mistakes. The takeoff place, it's not that it's short, but it's enough. And so one guy spent 10 days over there. I have to thank God for this kind of, I don't know if I have a reason, that doesn't matter, but I have to thank God, because one guy spent 10 days in the peak trying to fly in 2010, and he had no chance. It's always covered by rain or clouds. It's impossible to take off because you have to see. And I got really blessed, let's say, because I climbed it yesterday afternoon. We spent one night in rain, really strong rain, but at the afternoon, everything was clear. And just, let's say, a perfect wind to take off. So it was. If you
was it there, thermic at all? Do you get?
No,
was it thermic?
I took off around 7 a.m. between 6 and 7 because it was too risky to try a thermal flight. I have no balls to that. I was just about to take off and do a morning fly, and it was amazing. So when I landed behind the mountain, the guys speaking, because they recorded it, the guys speaking in their language. It was amazing. In the radio, the Indians, the Yanomami talking the radio. Oh, you need to rescue that guy because he's in the middle of there. If you don't go there, no one will be able to him. I should be there until today. So the guys came and helped me to get out. It was really, really nice. If we get back to there, we need to go with tandem gliding to bring some Yanomamis to their own village. It's possible to fly from the peak to their village, and it could be a really, really amazing thing to do.
Oh man, you blow their mind. That would be so awesome.
Yeah.
I had a really special experience decades ago in the Amazon. I've been through a lot of these places you're talking about, Manaus and stuff, but I spent a few days in the jungle with a local who had grown up in the jungle. He wasn't Yanomami, but I don't remember what tribe. But it's amazing to see the jungle through their eyes, because when you for those who haven't been in the Amazon, in the jungle, you hear everything. The sounds day and night are just, it's a cacophony of beautiful sound. It's just amazing, right? But you don't see any of the stuff. To see the sloths and the monkeys and the lizards and the snakes and everything, you have to have lived in the jungle or be with a guide who can go, watch this. And then they make all these sounds, and they know how to talk to all the animals in the forest. And it's really a very special experience to be in the Amazon with someone who's grown up there, because it's their place. They understand it. They know what they're looking at, because we just see this beautiful canopy, and it's hard to, at least for me, I remember, you don't see any of that stuff until you can see it through their eyes, and they can point it all out.
It's for me, it's impossible either. It's impossible to see. We need to have their help to enjoy the jungle. We look and we see a lot of trees, etc., and the small grass and arbust, but they know it. The name, the name tree. This word tree is not there. They don't have this word as a common.
Sure.
They have the name of each. The generic one doesn't make much sense for them.
Right.
And I feel the same experience. We are born in the cities. We are unable to really deal with that environment. And I also agree with you, the highest experience regarding this takeoff from the highest peak here in Brazil was not the flight. The flight was amazing. I'm really glad. But it was the experience with the guys in the jungle. I completely follow you on this. I completely agree with you on this.
I'm sure that was really special. Leandro, thank you, man. I appreciate it. And happy flights, safe landings, and keep having fun. If you find the Cloud-Based Mayhem valuable, you can support it in a lot of different ways. You can give us a rating on iTunes or Stitcher, or however you get your podcast. That goes a long ways and helps spread the word. You can blog about it on your own website or share it on social media. You can talk about it on the way up to launch with your pilot friends. I know a lot of interesting conversations have happened that way. And of course, you can support us financially. This show does take a lot of time, a lot of editing, a lot of storage and music and all kinds of behind the scenes cost. So if you can support us financially, all we've ever asked for is $1 a show. And you can do that through a one-time donation through PayPal, or you can set up a subscription service that charges you for each show that comes out. We put a new show out every 2 weeks. So for example, if you did $1 a show and every 2 weeks, it'd be about $25 a year. So way cheaper than a magazine subscription, and it makes all of this possible. I do not want to fund this show with advertising or sponsors. We get asked about that pretty frequently, but for a whole bunch of different reasons, which I've said many times on the show, I don't want to do that. I don't like having that stuff at the front of the show. And I also want you to know that these are authentic conversations with real people, and these are just our opinions, but our opinions are not being skewed by sponsors or advertising dollars. I think that's a pretty toxic business model. So I hope you dig that. You can support us. If you go to cloudbasedmayhem.com, you can find the places to support. You can do it through patreon.com/cloudbasedmayhem. If you want a recurring subscription, you can also do that directly through the website. We've tried to make it really easy, and that will give you access to all the bonus material, little video casts that we do, and extra little nuggets that we find in conversations that don't make it into the main show, but we feel like you should hear We don't put any of that behind a paywall. If you can't afford to support us, then just let me know and I'll set you up with an account. Of course, that'll be lifetime, and hopefully you're being in a position someday to be able to support us. But you'll find all that on the website. All of you who have supported us or even joined our newsletter or bought Cloud-Based Mayhem merchandise, t-shirts or hats or anything, you should be all set up. You should have an account and you should be able to access all that bonus material now. Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate your support, and we'll see you on the next show. Thank you.